The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that. It's the only way we're going to lose this election.
We can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden has been elected president of the United States.
The third time has turned out to be the charm, not only the charm, but possibly the most consequential election of our lifetimes.
Donald Trump always intended to lie about his loss and try to steal the election, to cheat after the results came in, to stage a coup. That is the case these January 6th investigators made today, drawing on evidence like part of the clip I just showed from then President Trump speaking in public before Election Day and testimony about the similar plans he set in private, all showing an intent to lie and steal as his advisors showed him he was still on track to lose. And that was the case on election night and after, with all legal paths closing in more court losses.
My recommendation was to say that votes were still being counted. It's too early to tell, too early to call the race.
I remember saying that, to the best of my memory, I was saying that we should not go and declare victory until we had a better sense of the numbers.
The results were still being counted. It was becoming clear that the race would not be called on election night.
And Trump's lies about the actual vote then morphed into lies about the supposed fraud that would then reverse everything, aides fact-checking him on that score.
I essentially said, look, we looked at that allegation. That allegation was not supported by the evidence.
Eric and Pat didn't, told the group, the president included, that, none of those allegations had been substantiated.
I said, okay, well, with regard to Georgia, we looked at the tape, we interviewed the witnesses. There is no suitcase.
I told him that the stuff that his people were shoveling out to the public was bull.
Now, at some point, all this evidence might seem repetitive or even to some viewers, potentially tedious. Of course Trump was lying. Of course he knew he lost. The sayings go. But the committee is trying to build potentially a wider criminal case here. So it's also knocking down potential defenses like that Trump somehow really thought he won or believed some reasonable staff input that claimed he won. Well, after 1,000 depositions, the committee is spending so much time on this right now today because investigators think it's important that Trump cannot in any way hide behind a sort of smokescreen of his own asserted delusion. Because the evidence shows he was not actually deluded on this point. He was very much, they say, an informed coup plotter, not some bumbling, unemployed, deluded goofball BSing in a, coffee shop. In other words, the committee has a prebuttal to a very Trumpian concept that actually long predates our current era. You may recall it from an iconic Seinfeld episode. The argument being, if you truly believe the BS that you're pushing, then maybe technically it's not a lie.
Jerry, just remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
It came to be known as the Costanza defense. It's been used in households and relationships around the country. But today's evidence suggests that on this more serious matter, it is not legally available to Trump. Is that why the committee bore down on this point? Bill Katyal, why does it matter that the committee says it has evidence that Trump knew the whole time he lost?
Well, Ari, I saw you bring up this whole kind of Costanza defense this morning in the live hearing, and I thought it's a really good point that you're making. But of course, Donald Trump is not a Seinfeld character. I mean, maybe he could be if one of the writers had a stroke while writing his lines or something like that. I'm pretty sure that the only thing that Trump and George Costanza have in common is that both of them don't want you to know their SAT scores. And maybe that their parents should have hugged them more when they were young. I don't know. But legally, I think you're absolutely right here. Trump's defense has always been, I genuinely believed that I won this election. And the testimony today just destroyed that claim. It wasn't from Democrats. It was from Trump's inner circle, like all those clips you were just showing, Bill Barr, his campaign manager, others saying that this was wrong. And it becomes then at that point hard. If you're thinking, Ari, as I know you are, how's a jury going to evaluate this? Should there be a criminal prosecution? When Trump ignores basically his entire Justice Department, from Bill Barr down to the prosecutor in Atlanta that Trump put in there, B.J. Pak. It's hard for Trump to say, I was accepting in good faith the allegations of an inebriated Rudy Giuliani as opposed to all of this other stuff. And that's why I think it was such significant testimony. Yeah, all great points. And then when we widen out, Neil, people who lived through the whole Mueller era remember, were there going to be star witnesses? Many of the Trump administration tactics delayed. Don McGahn was factually a star witness in the Mueller report, but getting him out in front of the world the way you had in the Watergate hearings or other witnesses did not happen. I think people remember that time frame. Here, in some ways, Bill Barr today, as more and more of his deposition comes out, is a star witness, which is distinct from his overall record. So we wanted to both show viewers the news, what he said under oath, bad for Trump, but also get your views on this wider idea that, he did resign in December 2020, and we're getting more of his claims under oath about why. And yet let's look at the official resignation letter, because we do comprehensive news here. First paragraph, he says he appreciates the opportunity to update the president on the voter fraud allegations, and they would continue that probe. Then he also says Donald Trump had unprecedented achievements, a historic legacy. This is a person who, as I mentioned, the Mueller probe was throwing the full weight of his public words and leadership to basically selectively quote, to interfere with the Roger Stone sentencing. Here's what Bill Barr was saying, though, today.
I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bull. And, I didn't want to be a part of it. And that's one of the reasons that went into me deciding to leave when I did.
Neil, I want your assessment, having worked inside the Justice Department. To be as fair as possible, there are times where internal concerns are not best aired in public in real time. This seems like a very abnormal situation where he says he's resigning in part over this. He's concerned about the president detached from reality, trying to overthrow an election. Should he have spoken out in some way? Oh, absolutely. I mean, Bill Barr, I think, is running to try and launder his reputation like some of the others who are testifying today. But, Ari, it's not, I totally agree with the idea that you don't air out all your dirty laundry when you're a Justice Department official. But Barr did the reverse. In this fawning resignation letter that you were just pointing to a moment ago, that's like the equivalent of Donald Trump on January 6th saying to the insurrectionists, go home, we love you, you're very special. That's what that letter reads as. And remember, this is the Attorney General who basically enabled a lot of the machinations over the election in the first place. He broke with the longstanding Justice Department policy, Ori, that said that election claims of fraud should wait until after certification, that you don't do it ongoing. And indeed, the chief of the Justice Department's election integrity unit resigned because he felt that Barr was manipulating things, and so many prosecutors voiced their objections at the time. That policy has since, on day one of the Biden administration, been restored, which is a long-standing bipartisan policy, administration to administration. So it's a little bit too late now, I think, for Barr to sit and say, oh, I thought all this was BS and so on. The guy did nothing until he wrote his book and testified now. And I'm glad he testified, because this testimony is really important, as we were talking about a moment ago, in establishing that criminal prosecution and indeed just Trump's wrongdoing as a moral matter, as a political matter, as a matter of integrity. So it's great that we're getting this, but, this does not make Bill Barr any sort of hero or anything like it. Great to get your perspective on all of it, including that tension there in his public statements. Neil Katyal, thank you.